Um, I am so excited to talk about this book, The Mountain Sings. Actually, it's called The Mountains Sing. I always get that wrong, but I can't wait to talk about it. Hey, BookFam, welcome if you are new here, and a big welcome back if you have joined me before. My name is Chantel Levon, and I'm really excited to just be sharing space with you this evening. It is a very interesting May day. It's been has a little bit of chill in the air. I was out for I think about like 40% of the day. It was like blue sky clouds, not blue clouds, you guys. It was the blue skies and white fluffy clouds. And then in the midst of that, it was like all this rain, which rained hard for about 5 minutes, and I was kind of trapped in it. But then it cleared up, and it was glorious. And so now it is evening, and the sun is setting, and I was like, ooh, I want to try and get in this book chat with you guys because I've been thinking about this book. And so I just decided to try to just take advantage of the moment that I had today. And so hopefully everything will work out and we'll still have light and all the things. But I really was excited to jump on and talk about my thoughts, just share my thoughts with you about The Mountains Sing by Phan Mai. And yeah, I'm just so excited to talk about this book. I came across this book or met this book or was given this book, I would say, by my book club, one of my book clubs. I'm in two book clubs that meet in person. And the book club where I was discussing this book is a book club that focuses on international works. And so, and the best thing is, we actually have our book club meeting at restaurants that are tied to the region of the book. So I had some delicious Vietnamese food. I don't know if I have a picture. If I do, I'll pop it up for you guys so you can see it. But it was really good. It was a great time. And I also learned a lot about the area where we went to eat. There's an area called, I think, Eden Garden that's in Northern Virginia. And it's where a lot of Vietnamese families migrated in this DMV area and where they live. And they have a beautiful community shopping center that is there and a lovely plaque. It was just really great. So I really thoroughly enjoyed that, and it just made the experience of the book, like what I was reading, even more real, which is the purpose of it. So this is, I have my book notes because those of you all who don't know, I don't do ratings. So you won't like hear me say if it's a 5 star, 3 star. I just really love to share my thoughts about the book, things that it made me think about, things I liked, things I might have struggled with, so on and so forth. And hopefully to give you an idea if this is a book that, if you haven't read it, if you want to read it, it'll give you an idea if it's like something you'd be interested in. Or if you have read it, I would love to hear your comments about it too and have a conversation about it. So that's kind of the purpose of my book chat talks. So if you see me looking down, it's just because I'm trying to make sure that I say everything that I want to say about this book, and I'm not leaving it on my beautiful memory to remember to do that. Um, so this is a historical fiction set in Vietnam, and the author, Nguyen Phan, spent 7 years working on this novel. I thought just to start, I would read her biography, or it's not a complete biography, but a little tidbits in the back of the book. And it says, born into Vietnam War in 1973, um, uh, Nhan Phan grew up witnessing the war's devastation and its aftermath. She worked as a street vendor and rice farmer before winning a scholarship to attend university in Australia. Upon her return to Vietnam, Wan I'm trying to really say her name correctly, Nguyen Phan, there it is. Nguyen Phan contributed to the sustainable development of her homeland via her work with local and international organizations, including UN agencies. She's the author of 8 books of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction in Vietnamese. The Mountains Sing is the first novel she has written in English. Her writing has been translated and published in more than 15 countries, and she's received many honors. She has a PhD in creative writing from Lancaster University in the United Kingdom, and currently divides her time between Indonesia and Vietnam. And yeah, I just loved having that little tidbit of information about her. Actually, after I read this novel, I became very interested in the author. And I think if you read it, you would too, or maybe as I go through my book thoughts, you'll understand why. So like I said, she spent 7 years working on this book. And one of the things that she did is she took time to really interview lots of different people. So this isn't a single person story. This is, as she describes it, more of a collection of stories that make up this story, and different things, different threads of people's lives that she pulled to make up the story. And I really appreciated this because I feel like it just read so authentic to me, and it just came across like tangible, or it had substance to it. In a way, it just was really, really well done. I kind of experienced this book as a beautiful, hard read. And I think that that is definitely true with any book that you're reading that involves war, or where war and conflict is the central background, which is definitely what is in this, what this story and the lives of these people are up against, this long period of change and devastation and trauma through wars and through conflicts. There is a ton of history that is covered in this book, spanning the 19th century into the 20th century. This novel touches upon French colonialism to communism, to separation of the North and South Vietnam, to actually the Vietnam War, into the present. So it is just, you get a lot of history. And even though there is a lot of history in this book, it doesn't read like history first. And that's what I really appreciated. It really reads people first. You get the people first, and the history is happening there, but it's not something that's like in your face. It's not forced in that way, like it's trying to, the purpose, it's trying to teach you a history lesson. And I really liked that. There are 4 generations that are, kind of that we journey with throughout this story. But the story is really focused on 2 particular characters, and that's the grandmother and granddaughter, and the granddaughter is affectionately known as Guava. And I really liked the choice that the author made to like super focus in to just this one family. And we stay with this one family, and we experience everything around through this one family. And I really liked that. As far as the structure, the narrative structure, it goes back and forth between the grandmother and the mother in the telling of the story through first person. And in doing so, you're switching back and forth from time, like in between different time periods. And I think that kept the story interesting to me, just that shift, that constant shift. And I was able to see, because of that, the direct kind of comparisons between the grandmother's life and the granddaughter's life. What was so similar, and also what was so different, or where change had happened. Not only change in the physical environment, the landscape in which they were living through and in, but also just their belief system and the changes that happened in that place too. Let's see, this book explores several themes. There's generational trauma from war, there's survival and resistance, family, and just extreme love of family. There's also identity that's explored here, the theme of identity, who belongs and who doesn't, memory and history, women's agency, and lastly, I think hope and renewal. And I say lastly, that doesn't mean that's like all the themes there, but when I was reading it, those were the major themes that that struck out to me. And with that being said, I think that the themes that I really that I kept thinking about after I finished this read was really three. The first one is on generational trauma, and we know that whenever someone is living through war, there's going to be trauma. What I really appreciated about this book was that it was slowed down, and because it was happening with two different characters that we were in two different time periods, we were able to experience the trauma that happened in the present when the trauma first occurred, but we were also able to see the legacy of the trauma through the granddaughter's life. And that was really fascinating to me. And there are a couple of events that happen, that take place, that really allowed us to see. One was the Great Hunger that happened in Vietnam, where there was just extreme hunger that was happening. There was no food. There was not enough food. Another was the Land Removal Act, and I remembered studying that, in school, but it was a wholly different experience to read about a family as they were living through that and what was happening to them, and also how the Land Removal Act impacted the different class systems, because this family, the Tran family, is actually a land-owning and wealthy family. And so it was interesting to see how they were impacted and what happened to them in this Land Removal Act. And so both of these things, the trauma of war, so you have death that's just with war, but also with the Great Hunger and the Land Removal Act, there was the trauma of displacement, like no home, and also I would say the trauma of lack, like not enough, not being satisfied, not being nourished fully, not knowing when your next meal is going to come from, and seeing the legacy of that, the lineage that trauma has on future generations. And so I really loved being able to enter into that through story. Another theme that really stuck with me is the theme of women's agency. One of the things I loved about this book, I thought that the female characters were so strongly written. And I really read it as, this is a woman's book. It's a woman's story. It's a story about mothers and daughters in this setting of war and desperation and despair. And because of that, I just think that the female characters, the grandmother was so rich, so much texture. The granddaughter was too. And it reminded me a lot of how I felt when I was reading like the Joy Luck Club or A Thousand Splendid Suns. There is just this layering that you get with these characters. They're very, very three-dimensional. And so there were choices that the grandmother made, that the mother made, that I didn't agree with or I didn't understand. But I was able to accept it or to receive it. I had to sit with it. I wasn't able to just quickly dismiss it. And I think that was a beautiful thing. Sometimes, especially as we live our lives, we kind of do a swipe left and swipe right of people as we come across them or their situation. And because of how these characters were written, I wasn't swiping left or swiping right. It was like, I'm with them. It was a being with them, being with these women and sitting and witnessing both their wins and their joyous moments, and there are some joyous moments, and also sitting and just being with them and being a witness to very painful and shameful, degrading moments. I couldn't do anything to save or stop it, but I was a witness to it. And because of that, it just felt very privileged. I think as a reader, I felt a sense of privilege to be able to be a witness to their story. And that, I think, leads me to the last one, the last thing that really stuck out to me and has stayed with me, and that's the one of memory and history and the importance of storytelling in this novel. And I was supposed to mark a quote. I did mark it. Oh yes, I did. This is Guava speaking, and she says on page 17, "That night and for the next many nights, to dry my tears, Grandma opened the door of her childhood to me." So this is coming right after their village had been bombed. And she goes on to say, "Her story scoots me up and delivered me to the hilltops, and where I could fill my lungs with the fragrance of rice fields, sink my eyes into the Lamb River, and become a green dot on the mountain range. In her stories, I tasted the sweetness of sim berries on my tongue, felt grasshoppers kicking in my hands, and slept in a hammock under a sky woven by shimmering stars." And I just absolutely loved this. I love that it was in the beginning. I think it set the tone of what was happening in the back and forth. It was almost like this back and forth between chapters was this ongoing storytelling conversation and relationship that was happening through and in time with these women. It's the passing down and the treasuring and keeping and honoring of stories. And in this way, it's just how stories save us, and how important memory is. Without memory, you can't have stories. And so I loved how it starts off with a very traumatic event of the bombing of this village, and how the grandmother, in one of her acts to save and heal, tells story. And it's something that's very human, storytelling. Other creatures, I don't think they do storytell the way that we do and pass down these memories and preserve it. And in what they're passing down resilience, and they're passing down hope, and they're passing down love and care, and they're passing down wisdom too, and beauty. And I just really love that. And it reminded me of a book that I recently read. I have a book chat on this too. I will link that in the show notes if you're interested in this. But this is a book that's in a whole different, it's an Afrofuturism book. So if you're into futurism or sci-fi-ness, check this out. But one of the things that is central to this book is about stories, and how important story is to humans and to our humanity, how important stories are to humanity. And so it's just interesting coming from this book and then going to that book and seeing in two very different ways a similar thing, and how stories are so rich. I can go on and on. I'm going to do another video just about how I think stories are important, but that is not what this is here for. And so I'm being mindful of the sun setting in my thing in time, and I don't want to go off on a tangent. But I really say all this to say that I really liked how the author lifted up before us, the readers, the importance of story, and especially within the context of family. Because throughout all of the devastation, what was lost, who were lost, and the people that were displaced, those types of things, with the holes within the life, right? The missing fragments and the fragmented bits that just come to be because of a war-torn state. The stories were like those missing pieces, the glue, the fillers, what connected them. And I really, really loved that. One of the things that I liked about this in addition to everything that I've said, another thing I should say that I liked about this novel is just the way that she wrote it. I thought this was, I was like, this is a poet here that I'm reading. Even though I wasn't reading poetry and I didn't even know she was a poet, I assumed that just because of the way that she read it. It is very poetic in some places throughout. And I think that poetic nature of her writing helped us to read the story that is very painful and is filled with trauma and is unsettling. But she gave it to us in a way that just is lyrical and poetic and beautiful language. And I really appreciated that so much. I also like the fact that it's also very plain, simple, and humble language at the same time. It's poetic and it's lyrical, but it's simple and plain and humble. It's totally accessible. And I felt like because of the way that she crafted it, it made me feel closer to the characters. Like I was up front close. There wasn't anything that was a barrier between me and them and the characters. And I think that she accomplished that because the language was so humble. And I think I like the word humble even more than simple, because simple can mean like simple, simplistic in a derogatory way, and that's not at all what I'm communicating. So I think the better word choice is humble. It was just it was filled with humility. Her writing style, I think, was filled with humility in the telling of the story. The only thing that I didn't struggle with, but I noticed in my reading, is that it felt like towards the back, like not the end, but nearing to the end of the book, it felt like it just dragged on just a little bit too slow, the pacing. But outside of that, I really enjoyed it. It was a hard, book, as I said, to read. So it wasn't something that I picked up and I just kind of went through. This was something that I picked up and I sat down, and then I picked it up again. I would read some, put it down for a day or half a day, and then pick it back up again. And I thought that was fine. I actually like that because there's so much here. There's so much history. There's so much just what happens to people that I was not just thinking about, but feeling. And so I needed some time to process. I learned a lot about things that I didn't know, and I was reminded. I was like, oh yes, the French were involved, in the Vietnam War. My father actually was in Vietnam, and my uncle was in Vietnam, and so that was another kind of interesting thing, reading it on this side, or reading it from a different perspective, I would say. And my uncle and my dad didn't really talk in a lot of detail. I think I know one story that they told. They would both tell this story from that time. But I know that it was it was something that changed and shaped them. And there's one thing that she said in an interview. I will try to link her interview in the show notes below that I watched, because as I said before, after I read it, I became really interested in this author and her story and how this story came to be. And one of the things that she said is that she really wishes that there was I think she was in Washington, D.C., and I think she had gone to the Vietnam Memorial, which if you have not been, please go and go to the memorial. It really is moving. It really is moving. And she said that part of healing and working through her own emotions and experiences and trauma of what happened to her family, families that she knows, her country, is really understanding the total impact and devastation that happened on everybody that was involved in the war. And she says that she wishes there was one monument that really honored everyone, that really honored everyone that was involved. And I thought that was really special. Again, I'll try and link that video in the show notes below. She is a dynamic woman. I enjoyed listening to her, and she's an activist too. She's a writer activist, and I felt like that's something that comes across, clearly. But I feel like in this story, she made the right choice to let her activism come through in the simple telling of a simple family. This is an ordinary family living in an extraordinarily difficult time in their country's history. So that's all I have, you guys, with this book. Again, if you have read this, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you liked it or not. I just also wanted to say that there's, I think, 4 or 5 pages of just endorsements, even before you get to the story, praise for this book. So it's been well received, both internationally and domestically. The other thing I wanted to say too, gosh, y'all, this is why I have to write stuff down, is that I was so impressed that this was the first time that she wrote a novel in English. I know that someone was asking me if they knew I was reading it and wanted to know if there were any barriers or challenges because of that, and absolutely not. I would not have known that unless I read that fact. So I wanted to make sure that I say that as well. And I did say it spans 4 generations, but which is, that means it's a big family over a long period of time. And she does provide this nice little family tree in the book, so that you can reference back as you're reading and figure out, like, okay, who's who belongs to who, and that was helpful. So again, I think this is now my official real close. Please let me know if you've read The Mountain Sing. Let me know what you think about it. I would really love to know and engage you in kind of that conversation. Let me know in the comments below. And if you have not read it, let me know if it's something that you're thinking about reading. Does this pique your fancy? Are you curious about it? Is it your cup of tea? Will you give it a go? Will you give it a try? Let me know that too. And if you do, I would love to know your thoughts about it as well. I haven't actually like historical fiction. It's one of my favorite genres, but I have not read, it's been a minute since I've read one, so I was happy to read this. And I'm actually interested in looking up her poetry in the video that I referenced. She does read some of her poetry, and it's pretty amazing. So I probably will look up some of her poetry and read that as well. But that is all, you guys. It is officially almost close to my bedtime. The sun has set, so that means it's time for me to get ready for bed, as I'm really trying to do a new thing in my life, and that is wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll let you know how that's going, but I feel like I will be a better me if I can just get up out of my bed and before the rest of my lovely humans and my 4-legged baby wakes up, so I can just have some me time and start my day off in a gentle way. So if you have any tips for that, if anyone's figured that out or is doing that, please let a sister know. I need the help and encouragement for that. But until I see you next time, you guys know what to do. Please visit a local bookstore, and when you're there, treat yourself to something just fun and good. It could be a book, it could be a yummy cup of coffee, or in my case, a chai tea latte, or a cute bookmark. Just treat yourself, treat yourself. And that's right, stay reading. Bye, guys.